everybody, it's Treasure, aka the Cat Shrink, and today I have a very, very special guest. Her name is Mary, and Mary is the wonderful woman who not only helped save one of the toughest cats I think I've ever worked with, but also gave her a home. So we're going to talk today a little bit about Heart and how I was introduced to her and Mary was introduced to her and how the whole thing worked out. So Mary, nice to see you. Thank you for helping out and coming to talk about Heart today, and your other kitties too, of course. They're also rock stars.
Of course, of course.
Oh, I would like you to set a little bit of background. How did Heart come to your attention? What were you doing? Kind of how did the whole thing play out?
So I was taking the program Animal Care at Sheridan College in Brampton, Ontario. And I did my placement at one of the local humane societies. And I took note of Heart during my duration there. And I had heard that she was a troubled cat. She got herself into a lot of public health issues. I think part of the main problems may have been that she was on a bottom cage. She was not on a top cage, so she couldn't really gouge her surroundings. So as I was doing my placement, a position came up within the Humane Society for an adoption counselor, and I didn't really have experience on that side of things. I had experience dealing with cats in particular most of my life, and troubled cats. But I took on the position, and right kind of as I got in there, I had learned, yes, that indeed Heart was a troubled cat. And at that time, things seems to have changed there, which is a good thing. But at the time, they had a board, and I was told specifically about Heart in saying that if I don't find an alternative placement for her to go, then she would be going to the board, and a decision would be having to be made between placing her or euthanizing her, because they were deeming her not adoptable. Like I had mentioned, she had been pretty much in and out of quarantine since the time that I started my placement there. So that was a lot to kind of take on, but thankfully the previous adoption counselor kind of set the tone and gave me resources and granted me the ability to reach out to those. And thankfully, at the time it was, and still is, NCWL, which is Nivea's Cat Rescue. Thank God for them, because I don't think that Heart would be here today had they not stepped in. She was a very challenging case, and unfortunately they just didn't have the resources there to spend that time that she required.
Yeah, and it becomes a liability for an organization like that too when they have young volunteers and stuff like that. People can get hurt. A lot of people don't realize how dangerous an aggressive cat can be to people. Like you can lose limbs and stuff from cat bites and whatnot. Like it can be a very serious thing. So that's something they had to take into account. And when you don't know what else to do, what do you do? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what happened next?
So I had reached out to Nivea's, and I think it was like a day or two later that you came in with your daughter, and I honestly almost probably started crying. I don't know. I probably started crying because that was, again, my first position in that field. And I had told myself a cat's not going to die of euthanasia on my watch because of something that humans failed this cat for. that it wasn't her fault that she was like this. It was humans, and I needed to find her a way out. And thankfully, um, you guys came in. I just stepped away because I didn't even know how to get her into the carrier properly. And
I
she
remember the look on your face when my daughter went over to the cage and you were
Yeah.
like, and I'm like, no, she knows what to do.
yeah, because I had spent like time and time with her, like myself, just trying to like tell her that like humans are okay and like we're not going to hurt you. And as much as, you know, we try to communicate with cats, it just doesn't always work, especially in that setting. And I think that's something that people need to remember as well, that just because cats are one way in a cage at a humane society does not mean that they're going to be like that in actual home setting. And I think that couldn't be more true for Heart with the support that she needed.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a stressful setting in the best of times. So when you get a cat that's already kind of got all these issues, like it's very easy for them to get written off because they are behaving out based on the fact that they're being bombarded with what feels scary and what they're being told to react to, you know, in a scary way. You can't have talk therapy with a cat. It's just not how it works. There's no talking reason. And when they're scared, they don't learn, they can't observe. So, you know, it's hard to get through and kind of break through that barrier. They need to feel safe. And that's kind of where it is. And I know that once Heart came to me, it was pretty clear she was not interested in having people anywhere near her for basically the reasons that you described, that she had, you know, been kind of failed over and over again. And a lot of it was people failing to observe her and her signals and her needs. With cat, Heart is very overstimulated cat. She gets very easily wound up. It's like people with PTSD or with anxiety disorders and whatnot, they tend to be a little bit more sensitive to a lot of stimulation. And cats are always hypervigilant. So when you take an animal that's already like here in terms of taking in all the data and being really stimulated by it, and you throw them up here, you've got to bring them at least down to here before you can do anything with them, because they're in emergency mode. They're not learning. And with her, everything was that level of stimulation. So her first reaction was, make it stop. I'm going to make it stop. If I get them before they get me, they can't give me that energy. They can't stimulate me. That makes me feel uncomfortable. They just leave me alone. And because she had been successful time and time again at that being a way to make the stimulation go away and people go away, that was her go-to. It's like when you develop a habit, it's repetition, right? And for a cat, when they succeed in getting their goal, which in her case was a lack of stimulation, a lack of discomfort from that, she won. She kept succeeding. So that was a strategy that worked for her. And it was a matter of how do you can't say, you know, that's not a nice thing to do, like you can with a schoolyard bully. So a lot of it with her was recognizing that and then finding a way for her, because cats can't help but react. They have to react to stimulation. They're a predator animal and a prey animal. And that's what keeps them alive out in the world, is that they have instant reactions and they're programmed and they use what works. But then it's like people, they can get screwed up with their programming, right? Like, and her automatic reaction was what worked. So she had learned that this aggressive forward moving behavior, that like she had to react, and that reaction brought it out. So how do you do that and change that up without getting bloody? Because that was what it was at with her. She drew blood and there was just no holds barred, take no prisoners. It was, I have no interest in that. And once I realized that that was kind of what was going on with her, she was fun. I had her in a cage, and you're familiar with the cages, like, you know, double critter nation type cage, just something out in the world. I knew I'm not sticking my hand in there. It's not happening. I'm not putting my face in that cage. So how do I break the ice, knowing that she needs to explode? It's not something that they can stop themselves from doing. So how do we turn this into something that won't hurt anybody? And I started with a stuffed animal, I'm not gonna lie. I would go into the cage, and at that point we did have her on some calming meds just to bring her baseline down. And you cannot overstate the helpfulness of meds in the beginning of these kind of processes, because if they're scared and they're wound up, they're not even paying attention. How are they supposed to absorb anything that you're trying to communicate with them? If somebody's having a panic attack, that's not the time to have a conversation. Right? You calm them down first, and then the rest kicks in. But I'd put the stuffed toy in, and she'd have her explosion. Then I didn't go away. So at first that was kind of salty. She was like, but it didn't work, right? And she'd come back around and I'd give her that toy again, and she wasn't succeeding. She's like, okay. After a little while, they kind of go, all right, so you're not going away. Right? I'm going to ignore you, or I'm just going to pretend that you're not there. I'm going to go on about my thing. And they become used to your presence. It's like building up a callus, right? Where you being close to them isn't a trigger because you're not feeding them anything bad. I'd go into the cage and give the stuffy and just stand there. I didn't try to talk to her. I didn't try to touch her. Eventually, she started kind of getting curious. Like the explosion would pass and I'd be there, but nothing bad happened. I wasn't trying to stress her out. So at that point, then curiosity kicks in. Okay, so this thing isn't trying to eat me. It's not trying to touch me. What does it want? Right? There she is, star of the day. And then, then they start allowing some of that other stuff. And as long as I kept a stuffed animal there, and I know you've probably seen her do this, where she does this thing where she plants her head into the ground.
She really just did that right now, like against that pillow. She's always doing that, but
and that was actually a taught strategy. When we started to take the stuffy away, she still had an initial something. She needed a routine, and anything that involved having her mouth was too much, because then the next instinct was to use your mouth.
Yeah.
So I started to kind of just encourage her to put her head down, and that turned into the splat that she does on her face every now and again.
Yeah.
And it's the same behavior. She's still excited to see you. She's still, expressing herself.
Like she's happy. She's happy right now. Like
she's totally, but it's in a way that nobody's hurting. And when she started realizing that I was bringing her good things, that we were all bringing her good things, and that she actually kind of liked being pet. She liked being touched.
Yeah.
And that, those were good things. Then she was coming forward for that. And then at that point, it was a lot easier for her to see, like, she still gets wound up. Mm-hmm. And there's times where she still gets overstimulated. And if I was silly enough to miss those signals, I'd still get a swat. Yep. I'd still get a little something. And then I would remove myself. Yeah. And the difference then was that she actually wanted me around. Mm-hmm. So the removal of myself, it wasn't a punishment, but it was a clear disagreement with how she was behaving. Yeah. And I bet you even now she probably does the same thing. Like she gets wound up and you're like, nope,
yeah.
I'm out.
It's so funny because I will stay where I am. She'll have her little spat if I don't breed her before it happens. She'll go away, and like literally 2 seconds later, she comes right back. Like she knows what she did was wrong. And it's like she wants to apologize because she knows that like I'm upset, but I'm gonna get over it. Like I'm not gonna hold it against her. And she comes back and she flops over. Like it's as if it never happened. Just like a little kid.
And that's the thing. Like people don't realize that cats are actually socially aware, and this is part of what feeds into issues sometimes that I think people don't recognize that they kind of create, in that they do react. And it's hard not to react when a cat's coming at you. It's hard not to have that, moment. You're like self-preservation kicks in and your instincts kick in. And then all of a sudden it's like, but you get that spike. And then a lot of times it's followed by like resentment or anger, where they're like, you little jerk. Well, a cat picks up on that. They don't understand the context of why you're feeling that way, but they start making the association between those incidents and negative feelings from you. And that can actually feed the problem, right? They do feel bad when they do those things. But if we just kind of, let it go and we're not stuck in it, they won't be stuck in it. And then it doesn't become a problem because all they can read is your feelings.
Yep.
They don't understand what's behind it. And if you're in a place of mistrust or hurt or whatever, they're going to go, well, why are they being mistrustful? This is the person I take my cues from. So I should stop trusting this. And because they take those cues from people, it's important for us to be mindful of where our energy at. I mean, I'm sure you wouldn't want to deal with a cat like that if you were having a really bad day and you were already kind of worked up. You know that that's probably not going to work out. And they'll tell you in no uncertain terms, like, hey, we're not doing this today. You're not in the right place, and I can't trust you because your emotional energy is all over, right? Especially with cats like Heart. So tell me, how's Rizzo as well?
Oh man, so Rizzo, she's not an aggressive cat, but she's a very nervous cat, and you know, right from basically when I brought her home, her favorite spot was underneath my bed, and I honestly contemplated so many times whether I was supposed to be her home or not, because I didn't want her to be hiding all the time. I didn't want her to be upset. I wanted her just to be happy. I didn't want her to feel like she wasn't welcomed here. And so thanks to lovely Treasure, still to this day, I have a very large dog crate set up. I don't keep her in there, but I do feed her in there. And that is literally where she will go when she just wants to be by herself or like just hang out. She knows that that is her spot. I have kind of stepped back now in like over the past couple years, I guess now since I've had her. If she wants to just escape, that's fine. Sometimes people just want to escape too. And I can't always make her be out in the open, but she knows that she is safe here. I, in the past, I guess, 3 or 4 months now, have put her on gabapentin just to kind of, decompress her even more, because I do notice that my confident male cat will go after her.
Yep.
Because he knows that she's not a very confident cat. She's more confident than she was, but she's not the most confident cat. And honestly, like since she's been on gabapentin, she has been way more relaxed. She does like happy paws more. She purrs more. She runs with me to go to bed. Her and Heart both sleep with me every night. But it took a long time to get there. It was not something that just happened. I've had them for 4 years now, and I honestly think it took a good 2.5, 3 years to get her to where she is. And again, just this year, I started her on gabapentin, and I honestly think that has helped her tremendously. And I think because she is more relaxed, that it creates an even more tone of I can trust her. Even though she knows she can trust me, it's just she's more relaxed. So she is more open to like, especially other people coming in. Before I would never see her whenever I brought anyone over. But I have my one person, my one house during this pandemic. And that's Amber. Amber has other cats. So she isn't loud and isn't, she just kind of sits. And before Rizzo was on the gabapentin, Amber never saw Rizzo. But ever since Rizzo's been on gabapentin, she comes out more, and she actually lets Amber pet her, which is like huge. Again, she's not aggressive. She's just scared. And honestly, I feel like my cat should be like a poster child for gabapentin, because without that, I don't think that she would be where she is right now. And I've noticed such a huge difference with her. I
Mhm.
couldn't be happier.
And you did all of the other work. You've done all the confidence building stuff.
Yeah,
You did all the crate work. I know
yeah,
she had a lot of forward movement when you started giving her a safe space and working with the
yeah,
crate.
yeah. And that's why I haven't taken it down, because it is still her safe spot. And I keep the door open. Like, she's not in there all the time like she was before. Um, and I'll just wake up in the middle of the night and she'll just be hanging out there, or I'll just like look over there randomly throughout the day, and she's just got herself in there because she just wants to hang out in there. She knows
Yep.
that that's her spot.
Yeah, it's her spot. She can observe the world and she's safe there. I think I've gotten a lot of pushback from people when I first mentioned dog crate sometimes, or that kind of, why would I want to put them in a cage? That doesn't seem like something that they enjoy. But the reality is, if you look in nature and how
Yeah.
cats can like comfort themselves, they find small little spaces where
Mm-hmm.
they can observe the world, but they feel safe. And that's exactly what a crate or even like a large carrier
Yeah.
can give them. They have their space and they can, be master of their domain, but they can still see what's going on. And that's how they formulate decisions, and a lot of their behavior and understanding of the world comes from. It's just from observing it and
Yeah.
having a safe space. They figure out really quick that when they're in that cage, nothing else can get to them. They might
No.
not be able to get out, but nothing can touch them.
Yeah.
And
So
that gives them a piece of
it
power.
creates that security for them. They can still observe the world, um, but nothing is going to come and hurt them, when they're actually first kind of situated in there, when the door is not open. But you're setting up them to be successful. Like, that's the largest dog crate that I could have gotten. And yeah, it's not aesthetic for my Victorian house, but you know what, that's what works for Rizzo. And honestly, like, without that, again, that as well as gabapentin, I don't think she would be where she is today. I don't. I truly don't.
No, I mean, she was, and I mean, she was with me for quite a long time before she went to you. And I was grateful, so grateful. I'm so grateful she ended up with you, because I know that you would do all of the other work that was needed. But it's
Yeah.
hard too when you have a lot of cats coming and going, which at the time I did, because I was still actively fostering and had a lot of cats coming and going.
Mhm.
Give that individual attention and really be able to create that confidence building and have that environment where you kind of created that environment around like observing, here's what she needs, here's how she's behaving, and then moving forward from there. And then even Hart, I mean, her and Rizzo had their own issues over time at first getting settled, even though they came from the same place. Like, it changes up the dynamic when they get into a new home and with new people, and it's a
Yeah.
new thing. They have to figure it out, and you worked with them, and it's funny. So with Mary Hart was actually with me for our audience for a long time. She bounced back and forth with me for almost 2 years. I think it was close to 2 years. And she actually did get adopted for a little while. And then it was a lovely girl who had her, and she was in love with her. And then something happened with her family and she had to move out of the country. And it was too much for Hart to go through quarantine, to go to the Middle East and all of this other stuff. Like, this girl knew that it wasn't right, and she brought Hart back to me. And that was literally when you were like, hey, still got Hart? I got my own place. You still got her? And I was like, how much more full circle, absolute perfect ending to the storybook tale could you possibly get than for her to end up with you, the person who originally advocated and gave her a voice, and you saved her. Chances are very, like I'm saying, probably 99 to 100% that if brought before the board, that decision would have been made because she was a liability.
Oh, for sure.
And it no nothing against, unfortunately those organizations have to make difficult choices like this all the time. And it's not their fault. They're not mean, they're not terrible. They don't have a choice. They have to think of their people. They have insurance. They have a lot of other stuff going on. So, I mean, I understand it, but also it's people like you stepping up and going, no, there's other things that we can do.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because there is such a lack of work in cat behavior in terms of research and science, it's kind of all up in the air. Everybody figures, well, dogs should sit and stay and go into crates and walk on a leash. What about cats? What's the expectation there, and how do we change how people think about what cat ownership means and what the responsibilities are to being a cat owner, and what things can we do that not only make our lives easier but also make quality of life better for cats, right? Being able to put a cat into a crate, being able to handle them to a certain degree even if they're scared, being able to anticipate and understand their behavior. you know I bet you anything, when you go to heart, or you go to the vet with heart, you kind of have a plan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my, because I know how hard it is, and I know how like the rest of my cats are, even before I was working in a clinic, I made sure that I was the one handling them, because they have that trust with me, and they don't have that same trust with some random. Not to say that they're not good handlers. Um, I just have that built trust with my cats, and it just works better for everyone if they are being restrained by somebody that they already know.
Mhm. And how about how are you guys with the carrier? They should be pretty good with the carrier, right?
Yeah, like I leave out the carriers, and sometimes I do actually find them in the carriers just hanging out. I have their blankets in there. I do put like food or treats in there, or even catnip sometimes as well, because people tend to just put them away just for when vet visits roll around. And I think it's important for cats to realize that that is another like hidey place for them.
Mhm.
And it is a safe spot for them. And it's not meant to be something that's scary. And I think it's important to note that the best carriers in terms of transporting to the vets as well are the ones that snap off, not the ones that zip up, that are soft sided.
Yeah, those ones are a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, no, you definitely want to be setting your cat up as much as you can for a successful visit. Because if you can get the ones that just snap off, most of the visit can be done actually in their carriers. They don't
Mhm.
need to come out of them. And if that's what they're already used to, and that's a safe zone for them, then that's what's going to set them up as well for success.
No, I agree with you 100%. And actually, I do have a video that's coming out about specifically that, and getting cats used to carriers. And a lot of that came from actually when there were hurricanes a couple of years ago.
Yep.
My group was just inundated with people that were like, I have an emergency situation, I have to evacuate, and I can't get my cat in a crate. Well, it's not just vet visits, it's moves, it's a lot of other stuff. But, in the back of my mind, it's always, if there's a fire or if there's an emergency in my home and I have to leave very quickly, can I get my cat in a crate? And if the answer is no, that's probably something you should work on, because that could be a matter of life and death for your cat. At one point, like, I actually, and I have another kind of like personal reason for that, is at one point I was working with a couple of cats that had survived a house fire. And these cats that were very traumatized. They took a lot of work to get back into kind of a normal place because the world became scary to them.
Mhm.
And one of the biggest regrets that the girl who had them expressed to me was that she wasn't able to crate them up. So when an emergency happened, she had to leave,
Right.
right? And then those cats ended up there, and she felt so horribly guilty, like she had failed her pets. She really didn't. I mean, she did the best that she could given a bad situation, and did kind of like made the tough choices that anybody would have had to make. But the reality is a lot of those things actually can be prevented
Mhm.
by being able to put your cat into a carrier in a very safe manner and in a quick manner where they're not afraid, because you never know what happens. Or if your cat suddenly gets sick, have you ever tried to take a cat who's already really sick and already really worked up and stick them in a carrier if they don't want to be there? It's just a recipe for disaster, and adds more stress and can
Yeah.
create a lot more issues than it is. And it's such a simple thing to address, but it's almost like society's overlooked these things in terms of cat ownership.
And
Like,
you know what's
no,
funny?
we need to do these things, people.
Yeah, you know what's funny too, like speaking of cat carriers and visit and like emergency vet visits, my one cat, George, he has actually put himself in the carrier, like as if to signal, like, mom, I like, we need to go somewhere. Like, it's actually, it can be a good thing, to leave those carriers out as well, because if they know that that's a safe spot for them, then that's like, they might actually just end up in there because that is where they feel like confined, and like as if it's like a safe spot for them. And I didn't need to force him in there. He was already in there.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not feeling so hot. I'm
Off
just
he
gonna
went.
be over here.
Yeah.
As you can see, there's mine. I always have
Yep.
one
Yep. And I have
open
one.
somewhere.
Where are we? Somewhere here.
Yeah.
Oh, somewhere.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not a difficult thing. I actually did see one person who had said, "Oh, I take the carrier out like a week before." Well, then you're giving your cat a week worth of stress,
Yeah.
because they still make that negative association. Another thing is just sometimes when your cat's there and they're already comfortable in their crate, closing the door, take them out, stick them in the car, drive around the block a couple times.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
even going anywhere where there's
Yeah.
no nasty conclusion, where they're just going out and getting used to the feel of being in the moving car and the carrier and the sounds and all that kind of stuff. I mean, people do it with kids, they do it with dogs. There's
Yeah.
no reason it shouldn't be done with cats. Cats have an incredible ability to learn very quickly if they see the value in what it is that you're doing. But also, they're really good at tolerating things. And the more you expose them to something, the quicker or the more thoroughly they're going to tolerate that. Even things like, touching them all over. A lot of cats don't like being touched a lot, or they don't like being handled. But even just by kind of like forcing the issue when they're in a really relaxed place, touching them all over, touching their feet, extending their claws, they might not like it. But if they tolerate it, watch what a difference it makes when you go to the vet. And the
Yeah.
vet has to do those things. And then suddenly your vet visit went from this screaming, bloody mess to, yeah, the cat looks a little irked, probably annoyed with you. Oh, not a fan of that thermometer and where it went, but I'll deal with it. I'll tolerate it because I'm going back into my safe space, and none of this is scary or threatening or new or any of that to me. This is routine. So I'll deal with it because later I'll get a treat or some love or some pets or something along those lines. Cats figure it out quickly.
Yeah. And like, speaking of toys and treats and stuff too, a lot of people seem to think that like rescue cats or cats that were outside don't play with toys. But I think it's important to note that every cat can, especially my own, have differences in what toys they prefer, what scratching posts they prefer. I have ones that like the carpet, but I have ones that like the sizzle. I have ones that like the corrugated cardboard. Sorry. It just takes getting to know what they like, and if you don't give them options, you won't know, and they won't like them.
Well, that's another thing that I think that applies not even just to cats, it's dogs, it's kids, it's everybody. You can't give them a no without giving them a yes. You're not going to get good results just saying no, because then they're going to take that behavior and put it somewhere else, and it's probably not going to be where you like. But if you can provide them with other options where they can have a yes, everybody wins. Scratching posts are one of those things. Like, a lot of people don't try multiple types of materials, or maybe it's the length. I had cats that really liked the horizontal scratching posts instead of the vertical ones because they could stretch out and do different things.
Yep.
They're not just scratching to clean the nail sheaths. They're actually stretching out these muscles and ligaments and tendons and everything. So, when they can fully stretch out, when they can, have a bit of a variety of materials, you're going to have way more success. I mean, at one point I had 14 cats in the house and they weren't touching my carpet. They were all using the various types of scratchers. I think I had like 6 different kinds. I had verticals and I had small ones and short ones and different types of material, and different cats had different preferences. I find the same can be true with litter too, is you can have cats that are kind of like into one kind, and then somebody else like, I have one friend, all of her cats use her litter box normally, But she has one cat who just will not pee in the litter box. She'll poop in the litter box. She'll only pee on a pee pad. And you know, and she went through a lot of different things to try and figure out how could she contain this cat's pee. Why was this cat unhappy? She just doesn't like peeing in litter. She'd rather pee on the floor. So she'll pee on the pee pad right beside it and then poop in the litter box. That's fine. Who knows why? But when you find what works and you give them a yes, then suddenly the problems can. Right now, all she has to do is clean pee pads. Okay. How hard was that?
Yeah.
You know, now the cat's not wrecking the floor and peeing all over the place and whatever. Like sometimes simple solutions. And it's hard to describe to people just how weird sometimes cats can make these snap decisions about something being a threat, and it can be the wackiest thing ever. Like I've seen cats that are afraid of people who wear glasses. I had one cat, Ramses, I worked with. I couldn't figure out what was triggering him. And it was myself and my two daughters, all of which had long hair. And one day I'd go in and he'd be totally fine. The next day I'd go in, he snapped out. He didn't like people with hair and ponytails for whatever reason. If we walked into the room and our hair was down, he was fine. As soon as one of us had a ponytail, he lost his mind. So somebody maybe with a ponytail had done something to him at some point for some reason. Maybe it was the way it moved. You can't really figure that part out, but sometimes it's like, that's what you're upset about. You know, I heard a cuckoo clock or a clock go off at your place earlier, and I actually had another person I was working with who new neighbors had moved in, and she couldn't figure out why her cat was suddenly going nuts like 3 times a day or 4 times a day, and they didn't have pets. So what was going on? Well, it turned out that the cat was hearing their cuckoo clock going off like they had it set to every 4 hours or something like that. And the cat didn't like it. It was making it lose its mind. So she started putting on a white noise machine that covered the sound so that the cat wasn't hearing it anymore. And then suddenly the cat was back to normal and everything was fine. For whatever reason, the cat decided that sound was bad. We don't know why, but sometimes being aware that sometimes they'll attach weird experiences to other things.
Yeah.
I've seen this too with cats, where you have cats in a household that have lived together really well for a while, and then a scare will happen maybe while they're playing, and a cat will get the claw stuck in the other cat, or something will come out of that that's totally accidental, but that cat will transfer their trauma or their feelings about that incident to the other cat.
Yeah.
In their mind can't separate that incident and that cat are different, right? So also thinking in terms of that kind of stuff, like if I was a cat and this happened to me, what things might upset me? Like cats are interesting little creatures when it comes to that kind of thing, and some of the strange attachments that they make to things. And I mean, like looking at the world from their perspective too, understanding they're hypersensitive animals, right? They cannot ignore any stimulation, but they're also on the ground, right? So what does the world look like from their level? If I'm trying to figure out what's freaking a cat out, first thing I'm going to do is go down, well, how are they seeing the world, right? Because sometimes you don't think about it when you're looking from up here.
Yeah.
When you get down and you understand a cat and their experiences, and then you look up at the world, oh, I could see why that might look like a predator. I could see why that might trigger this thing, or why they might get upset about it. Or maybe it's just a matter of, in that space, they only have one way out. And in nature, having one way out is certain death. You need 3, you need 4, you need to have alternatives and B and C plans. And cats always think in terms of that. So if they're feeling trapped, that can be one of the factors. So also taking a look at things kind of from their perspective, understanding that helps with that whole communication piece.
I think people too sometimes get discouraged with like lack of space that they have. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment myself, so like I get it. The crate is being set up for the 4 years I've lived here is not ideal, but I do it for my cat. And I have random chairs put around. I have their carriers out. I have all these like scratching, like not all of these. I have like two in the window. one against the wall, like scratching posts. You just find things of your own that you may not need and replace them with things that your cats need, because you know, you got to somewhere you got to draw the line between what you want and what they need.
It's part of
And
that
then
responsibility as a pet owner. People do this with dogs. Oh, I got a dog, so I got to build a dog run out back, or I got a dog, I need to make all of these alterations to things. And they kind of expect cats to just fit into their environment. And if you think about what it is that they live and how they're hardwired through their evolution to respond to the world, and you throw them into a home environment, first off, it's boring. Second off, cats are territorial. This all belongs to you, not them, right? So, like, you know, them having spaces of territory, it doesn't matter how small it is. It could be one thing. But then suddenly they have a basis to work from, a sense of security that's in line with their instinct and what it is that they would seek out in nature. And they don't need a lot of territory. You can live with several cats in a small space. What they need is instinctual fulfillment.
yeah,
To feel like a cat, to act like a cat, to have, pardon me, hunt, catch, kill, right? Those instinctive progressions of things, that instinctive fulfillment, they're going to be happy. It's about a quality of life for them that doesn't necessarily involve space, and it doesn't have to be expensive. You don't need fancy things.
no. So one of my cat's favorite toys, Chloe, again, she's straight off the street, so she literally had no idea what toys were. Her favorite toy is an empty pill vial that I got from my clinic that had gabapentin in it. And you give it to her and she's like happier than a pig in the dirt. Like, she's just so happy. It's those silly little things like tinfoil balls, or like, you know, a box. Heart's favorite thing to hide in right now is a box that I got in the mail.
Yep.
Like,
boxes are always a thing. I have one
yeah.
who likes bottle caps. She'll carry them around in her house. Or the tabs off of milk containers, the little pull tabs. Oh, but my one cat, you give that to her, and that is literally a week of entertainment. And then I find it somewhere in the basement at the bottom of the stairs because she's finally lost it. I had one cat who was really into pony beads. I was like, this is weird. I don't want her swallowing it. I thought, okay, it's got a hole in it. She never swallowed it, but she would bring that pony bead and she'd drop it. I'd hear the little ting, 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 ting on the floor of her dropping the pony bead. And next thing I know, she's chasing it around and she's carrying it around, and she would drop it herself and play with herself with a pony bead. Like, the silliest little things can entertain them. It doesn't have to be anything fancy.
No. And like, you can also at Dollarama, you can get these little toys.
Oh yeah, at the kids sections. Yeah, there's quite a few of those kind of things.
Yeah, like they're silly. You don't need to spend a lot of money. You really don't. And you know, if you're somebody that's trying to shop on a budget as well, there's lots of toys from like Winners and Marshalls that PetSmart also sells for like half the price. And it's amazing. You should definitely check that out if you are trying to find some interactive toys that are just out of your price point with PetSmart or Pet Value, whatever the case is. Check out those stores because
the cheaper stores.
Some stuff there.
I find some of the stuff they have in the birthday party section at the dollar stores and stuff for the little kids, where they have those little springs or little bouncy balls and stuff like that. I actually often will get from like the craft stores at the dollar stores the little puff balls.
Yep.
Because those are fun toys, but they're also really, really good to use for scent swap stuff.
Yes.
I'll take those little puff balls and I'll get like one of the cheap little collars and I'll glue the puff balls around and then put it on a cat that I'm trying to pick up a scent. And then put it on the other cat, and then you've got a scent swapping thing that you can use to create some of those comfort levels. Or, you know, you can have them close to you, for example, and you can have the cat surrounded in your set. They have some separation anxiety. Just cats are very much about pheromones and scent, and those things are just little sponges for smell. But in terms of toys too, they're nice and soft. They're not, you know, wrecking in the teeth or anything like that. And they just have so much fun with them. And if they lose it, you just go in the bag, Another one. Because you know they're going to lose it. And sometime, like a week or a month from now, you're going to lift your couch and there's a million toys under there.
Yeah.
Well, the ones they couldn't get, there's always that one spot in the house where you're going to lift it up. And oh, yeah, there's where the entire collection is that we've lost.
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly, like, it's not difficult to really have your cats come around. I think it just takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes a variety of different ways, different toys, patience. You may not have a lot of patience one day, but maybe try again another day. I think it's just important to keep at it, keep pushing their comfort levels too, because the softer, but like more kind of pushing the envelope kind of thing, that's how I got my cats to kind of get to where they are.
Yeah, push those challenge lines.
Exactly. Because if I just kept where I knew that they were comfortable, they wouldn't grow to be more confident. And I think it's important to note that cats can grow into who they want to be. They just need the right setups. And honestly, like, these cats were my first cats on my own. I live on my own. I don't have anyone else in this house. And without my attempts and support and, you know, everything that I have in place for them, they wouldn't be where they are today. They really wouldn't. And
Hart probably wouldn't be around, and Rizzo would be hiding under somebody's bed for the rest of her life. That would pretty much what it be boiled down. It's like, oh, look at the cute little kitty with all the toes. You see her for 5 seconds hiding. I have one final kind of big question. How much of your cats working with these particular cats, because they are, you know, you got to be more mindful about it. How much have they taught you about yourself? How much have you learned about you through the process?
So probably why I fostered failed twice. But I do love helping cats. Like, I love helping animals in general kind of get to where they are. And I feel like my own cats have kind of proven and really set fire to where my passion truly is, what I'm meant to do, who I'm meant to work with and work for. I honestly, like, without them, I don't think I would really have a strong foundation as to what I am passionate about to this day. They are just like the front runners of who I am, and people got to get past them in order to get to me.
If the cat doesn't like you, you're out. It's a really good way to vet people.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, look, my cat tried to eat you. Maybe we shouldn't date.
Yeah. And you know what? And having a lot of grace with them, having a lot of patience, which is very hard in this era that we live in. But they're not always going to be where you are, and I had to support them as to where they are today, to get to where they are at this point in their lives.
And did you find through the process that it kind of forced you to check yourself too, and see how much of it was like actually them and how much of it was you and like what you were projecting,
because
you were feeling in the moment?
Yeah, they feed off of my energy. And, you know, especially with Rizzo, because I just was at such a heartfelt loss with her, and I just thought she was never going to come around. And honestly, and that's where I kind of got to that point where it was like, you know what, if she wants to hide, let her hide. She has all of her spots and she knows that. But sometimes I just want to hide away from the world too, and that's okay. And if somebody's going to force me to do something, I'm going to run away. Like, there's a difference between challenging a pet a little bit and pushing them to build them to get to where they are, and like pushing them too much too fast. I think it's really important to kind of meet where they are and little by little increase what you're doing to get them further advanced. It's just
People
so,
people get impatient, I think, because they want the cuddle, like they want the end result. And I think this is kind of one of the things that our society has created, is this the sense of need for instant gratification, or that there's a
yeah,
silver bullet, or give me the quick fix. And unfortunately, when it comes to cats, there is no quick fix. There is no rushing them. You can accelerate the process by working with the nature of who they are as a cat, like
yeah,
how do cats think? How do they react to the world? You can absolutely use that stuff to move that process forward. But ultimately, you have to take the time. You have to make the emotional investment, and you have to be ready to kind of come with, go with what comes at you, because it's not linear either. You can feel like, look at, we made all this progress, and then one thing happens. It doesn't mean you're at the beginning, but it feels like that. And if that's when you give up, that's when, the whole process kind of falls apart. But it's like knowing, instead, going into the process, that you're going to have those, two step forward and then a step back, but keep going forward, because cats live in the now. They're not worried about what happened yesterday. They're not thinking about tomorrow. They're here right now.
and I
And I
think
think the biggest thing I learned from my cats was, no, you need to be paying attention right now. You need to be here in the present,
yeah,
and this is what's important right now.
yeah.
And that's how they learn. That's how they function. And if you can get on that page with them, I mean, you almost find too that you get more out of those moments.
You do. Yeah. Like, yeah, honestly, during this whole like pandemic as well, without these cats, I don't even know where I would be, because when you live on your own, it can be a very lonely, kind of scary world. But I promise, and I pretty much almost can guarantee, if you take a chance on this scared, misunderstood, you know, not the picture perfect cat, they will pretty well almost guarantee come around to be the most friendly and most affectionate cat you pretty much have ever come in contact with.
I find them very grateful. I
They
find
are,
the cats that have been traumatized, or feral cats, or cats that have come from these kind of backgrounds, when they do get to that safe place, they're like intensely grateful. They're so loving. They don't, even domestic cats, I find sometimes they can be a little holier than thou, which is fine. And it's with the whole cat thing, but just that unabashed, unlimited gratefulness at being alive, and at being safe, and all of that. It's a wonderful gift that they give back to you for everything that you've put into them, and every minute going forward from that, when they give you that, look at, you made me feel safe, so I'm gonna love you, and I'm gonna, I'm gonna give you all these things that I don't give to anybody else, and that I didn't feel safe to give to anybody else. Like, imagine, like, I can imagine every time you look at Hurt, there's a little part of you that goes, see, I knew it. Look at you.
yeah,
Look at you, what you're doing for me. This is the cat. Everybody was like, no, this cat's not okay. But
yeah,
look at her. She's loving me.
yeah. And I honestly think it's so important, and we've talked about this multiple times, is to read their body language. Even when I knew Heart, when she was at the Humane Society, she would do these soft blinks, and that as typically people know that when cats are soft blinking, they are telling you that they trust you and that they do love you. They just don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
So I think it's a lot of it boils down to body language, and meeting them where they are,
Yep.
um, taking those chances, pushing the envelope slowly. But it's just, honestly, like, I'll never forget like hanging out in front of her cage and watching her do that. And she would talk to the other cats, which is also kind of funny too. She is like a mama cat now to the
Yep.
rest of the cats. Um, Everyone's got to get past her in order to get in. But it's very heartfelt to be part of her journey. That's for sure.
Well, she's very lucky that you came into her life for multiple reasons. But, even more so because now, you guys have each other, and, you've also helped other cats, and she's inspired you in terms of like what your goals are, what your passions are. You took Rizzo at the same time. I remember you were like, give me whatever other messed up cat who's with her, and I'm gonna do my best.
Pretty much, because I wasn't
But I was
adopted
looking for
one.
something for Rizzo because I knew we couldn't give her everything we needed. We just had too much going on. And
Yeah.
I knew that with some really individual love and, and intention, and somebody who could really like look and see this is what she needs and give it to her, that she would get to come into her own. And you've also been that person for her too, which I'm immensely grateful for. And I know that she is too.
Yeah.
I thank you so much for everything you do and everything you've done, and for your time talking to me today. And I love seeing Nikki. It makes me so happy to see her there with you. And she's honestly one of the biggest success stories I think, we've had in terms of like long-term stuff. And you and I have kept in touch, and I love that I can check in anytime and see her and know that she's doing well. And she really is a kind of a poster cat
Yeah.
in terms of, hey, you can take any cat
You
and
really,
you can bring them around. It's just a matter of taking the time, learning how to communicate, learning how they communicate, and doing the things that need to be done that make sense for a cat instead of trying to assume they're like dogs and are going to learn everything. And
yeah.
just having the love and the willingness to take that chance. Even though, it seems a little bit scary, people like you are the ones that help cats like Heart to actually have homes and have a future. And I appreciate that about you.
Yeah.
I adore your face.
Well, thank you so much, though, for, forever, I'll be forever for you taking her on and getting her to a place that both of them, both Hart and Rizzo, getting them to a place that somebody could go in and adopt them, but also continue the work that they still kind of needed to grow into their cat person that they are
Yeah,
today.
they get to be their real true cat selves now. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful feeling, and I really, really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And
You're
we'll
welcome.
definitely have to have you back, and we'll just jam some more and talk cats, because cats rule.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks,
Thanks, Mary. We'll talk to you later. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.